Good New Year, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, and we're back. We were off for the holidays / my mental breakdown after the Monday Night Football debacle that was the Packers game, but we're back just in time for the wild card game this weekend against the Saints. Of course, it's the Saints. Why would it be anybody else? I'm your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com. Here with, as always, Mr. Joe Oberly. Joe Oberly is.
Don't do that. Don't.
Is that the first time you've heard that?
That is not. It's not. It's a sore subject with me, so don't do that.
Somehow that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, it's been an eventful time off. I got engaged.
Congratulations. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Congratulations. You're starting it off right. You're starting it off right.
I suppose. I had this huge plan. I was communicating with someone that I know that works at US Bank Stadium, and he was working with the team. Essentially, I was going to propose on the field during the Packers game, and the ring that I bought wasn't supposed to show up on time, and then it did, and it was just this huge debacle. And we ended up watching the game with my parents, the Packers game, and as I've said on the show many times, my now fiance was a Packers fan for her entire life, and she did not waver for 1 second. She didn't accidentally cheer. She didn't regress from being a Vikings fan once during that game, and it sounds really lame and very specific, but that combined with how crazy my family is and can be and all of that, the fact that she did not waver, I'm getting emotional, this is weird, made me feel like, man, she's a keeper, so I couldn't wait any longer. Plus, she would have figured it out. I'm bad at keeping secrets. Anyway, so yeah, I'll be getting married sometime next year, since it's still in 2019. But hooray for me, I suppose. Yeah, for her, I guess.
Oh, God.
I mean, you know me, so she's in for a long ride. All is not well in Vikings land, though. It may be a little bit better for some, a little worse for others, as we've seen. I wrote my magnum opus. I felt like Luke Skywalker at the end of The Last Jedi when he fights and then just disappears from exhaustion and basically dies. That was me after I hit submit that article to Purple PTSD Saturday night, which for us, I mean, it went viral, and I still can't figure out why. I think it got posted somewhere that it's normally not posted, but I could not find out where through Google Analytics. We'll get into that article. We'll get into obviously the Saints game. We'll touch on the Bears game, how the team is health-wise, and some 2019-2020 regular season awards, which I think we should start with. But before that, I didn't put this on the agenda, so it's not a great start. But since we weren't...
No, you can call me Joe Oberly. That's not good.
Ooh, yeah.
I
almost want to make a shirt now that just wear that to my wedding.
I had I've battled that name all my life when people on the air. Yeah, this is Joe Oberly. Joe Oberly? Is that...
Yep.
No, I said Joe Oberly. Is that one word? No. Joe Oberly. I had once had a suitor of my daughter drunk and saying my name over and over like that and said, "Has anybody ever called you Joe Oberly?" I said, "Yeah, not and lived." So
yeah, that's not the best way to endear the girlfriend's dad.
No, he's gone, which was one of the greatest days.
That reminds me of, okay, in a professional setting with people saying, "Did you mean Joe Oberly?" Like, have you heard that elsewhere, or is it maybe Joe and a last name? I always get in that same setting or context people saying, "Is it Johnson? S-E-N?" And I'm like, who is named Johnson? Johnsen?
The son of John. The
the
sin.
sin of it, yeah. Yeah, so I kind of feel your pain.
There you go.
But yeah, we didn't have a chance to really talk on air, and I don't want to get obviously too deep into it because it's old news by now. But how did you feel about that Monday Night Football game? Like, what was your general impression of it? It clearly broke my brain and all of my hopes and dreams.
Well, I had a different perspective than you did because I was there, and for the first time in 10 years of covering this team, I had a beer at the Vikings game. I was with
Wow.
my three kids, and I've been covering them for 10 years, so I don't drink during the games, and I went there to have fun. I didn't have to write a post game, thanks to you, and I instead had fun. The first three quarters were great. It was tense. It was like any Bears Packers or Vikings Packers game would be. And then it, went off the rails. But I had a good time because I was with my kids, having a couple beers. And then I found out what the price of beer was at the stadium. And I about
Yeah.
had sticker shock. I told them, I'll buy you one, but you guys are on your own after that. My goodness. But anyway,
It's no joke.
to the game, it couldn't be more disappointing. I mean, we all were psyched up hoping for a win, knew that it was going to be a good game because it was the Packers and everything was on the line at that point. They're both still battling for the division potentially, and you still had the first game of the year or second game of the year against them stuck in your craw, and you just thought that the Vikings would come out better, but the offensive line gave Cousins no time. Cousins gave his skill position people no chance, and it
What
was
do you
just
attribute that to? And I'm not using that as a segue to say, well, why did they run the game plan that they did? But it seemed kind of evident early that, I mean, he was just throwing the ball into the dirt.
Well, a couple of those I thought were because he saw there was nothing there, and maybe that was my perspective at the game. I mean, I've heard that a lot, that criticism, and I should go back and watch it, but I couldn't bring myself to yet. But I thought at least two or three of those were, he knew that there was nothing, so he was throwing it away in the ground. So I thought in that regard they were good decisions, but he kind of got roasted for those, and I didn't understand that. But maybe I'm wrong.
My interpretation of it. I mean, it seemed, at least on one of them, the one with Rudolph, it seemed like he bailed really early on it. Maybe it was some sort of post snap version of calling a timeout when you really don't like what you see on the field and you're like, nope. I don't know. I felt from a coaching standpoint that game was just awful across the board. Zadarius Smith had a career day. I felt like they could have done more to help out Riley Reif on the blind side. I mean, he was disrupting everything that they were trying to do, not just in the past game, but like teleporting through Riley Reif and breaking up run plays even almost before the handoff was made. And so, I guess it's hard to establish anything when that's the case, but just the lack of, I don't know. There was a point, and you were in the stadium, so maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit further, but I think the Vikings were up 10-9 before the half. There was under 2 minutes to go. They weren't seemingly putting any pep in their step. Granted, they were down on their own 10 or 15 yard line. But the crowd seemed to start booing them at that point, and I wasn't sure if they were booing the lack of a 2-minute drill or what if it was just general unease with how the first half had gone.
If it was, I think I heard some noise at that point. I thought it was from the Packer fans, but I couldn't be sure.
The announcers
I remember
on TV made it seem like it was the Vikings.
Really? No, yeah. I didn't really notice, Vikings fans booing them per se because I remember at one point, it was a decidedly purple stadium, which I was pleased to see. I mean, it's better than in years past. Not everybody had sold their tickets, but there was still plenty of representation from the green and gold. And at one point, I that's what I thought. But to be honest, I was drinking beers, Joe. So what can I say?
$20 beers. Well, we'll see. It left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, that's for sure.
It did.
The Bears game didn't help much, but how could it? You had a lot of backups out there, and so we don't really need to talk about it too much, but I think it's interesting, or the most beneficial thing to talk about going into Sunday's game is what we learned about some of the players that we don't necessarily see all the time. Hollins being one of them, Boone being the other. He obviously didn't get a whole lot going against the Packers, which was bemoaned by Zimmer multiple times in the media since. But Boone had a tale of two games, I guess you could say. Two of the turnovers early were his fault. The fumble after, I think his first touch was the 59-yard run.
Correct.
He had another run for 41 yards, so he got 100 yards on 2 touches. But then he fumbled and also dropped.
They gave that first pitch fumble to Mannion because he threw it at his hip. Now okay. I would say that Boone took his eyes off it and kind of looked upfield, didn't look it into his. But it wasn't a great pitch, and it came out at least in the where I heard was that they gave it to Mannion, and I think they're both to blame though. So go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and then there was the interception which bounced off of
right.
him. But they still had a chance to win the game late. They lost by a last-second field goal. I've heard a lot of people talking about Chris Boyd's day, how he played. Eric Wilson, who we've seen get some regular season action, not this season, but last season, had a decent game. Do you think we'll see anything from Boyd coming up on Sunday with Michael Thomas and his damn near 150 catches this season being in the Bayou?
That's a good question. I don't know. Everything's up for grabs with this secondary this season. Rhodes has not played well, as we'll, I'm sure, talk about after a bit, and they have struggled back there. I think Zimmer's got to pull out all the stops, and if you need something from Boyd, maybe, but I don't think so. I think you got to go with the guys that got you there. Rhodes had a mini bye week off, so he's going to be not hurt, I think, and then ready to go. I think you got to put him on him. I saw a stat this morning that Michael Thomas is the most targeted receiver this year, his target rate is the highest, 31.9% over any receiver in the league, which means the percentage of targets per routes run. And that just tells me cover the man, and you can take away a good part of their offense. So you're going to have to. They're going to be playing a lot of nickel and dime out there, and to try to take away the offense or to take away Drew Brees. But I don't know. You could see him out there. I guess the guy that impressed me as not being impressive was Sean Mannion in the Bears game because he looked. Well, reps are king in the NFL in practice. You got to get reps before each week with your players to really dial in stuff. And he certainly hasn't gotten them, so there is going to be a little rust. But he looked nervous. He didn't look accurate. He looked a little shaky in the pocket, and he just didn't look like a backup ready to play. And I kind of said that in my post game, and someone took me to task saying, "Funny that I judged a quarterback when it's just a meaningless game and there's backups in there." Well, I said to him that's true, but the coaching staff's certainly going to judge him on what they saw out there.
Of course. So, and I mean, it's not like they were playing. I mean, Khalil Mack was still out there. You know what I mean?
That's right. They played against the Bears starters. You're right. You're exactly right.
So it's like it's maybe backups in that regard, but if anything, to me, that's a testament to him playing better with less talent around him than anything else. You know what I mean? He didn't have all the skill players that Cousins has at his disposal. That would have been an interesting apples to apples comparison. I mean, not that they would have ever done that, but it would have been nice to learn a little bit more. That's kind of my argument with if the Vikings were to make a change this offseason, which we'll get into. You can't. Who do you have to replace Cousins versus somebody else? I still haven't gotten a good answer to that question for all these people that want to move on from Cousins somehow magically before his contract with all that guaranteed money is up.
You look for a backup. You look for a backup in free agency, and you draft a young guy you can develop. That's my. You keep Cousins. God dang, no, he can't. He's got guaranteed money.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Why not? Why pay him when you don't need to? And I think, okay, so I wrote an article. We can talk about this now, I suppose. about Monday night and some of my frustrations that I think a lot of people have, at least from what I've seen in the comments in response to it, not necessarily on our site, but Facebook or other places. It's relatively split down the middle. It's people saying that, like, hallelujah, I've been saying this all season, and other people just basically saying this is garbage, I'm never reading Vikings territory again, but not really saying why. Which is fine.
Which is every article that's ever been posted there.
It's like, man, we've done probably 2,000 articles in the last couple years, and just one of them are gonna turn you off to the entire work of 6, 7 guys. All right. At the end of the, I don't like to bash readers, but at the end of the day, are you going to stop watching Netflix because you don't like a show they have, or what are you going to do with your time? The crux of it is that it feels like. First, I want to say that as a guy who's labeled himself or have been labeled a Cousins defender, I understand that he is not a perfect quarterback. I also understand that when he's bad, he's very bad. I don't necessarily think quarterbacks that are. Every quarterback has things they're good at and what they're not good at. Lamar Jackson is good at running the RPO, for example. He might not be good at other things. Cousins is good at play action and bootlegs, rollouts, getting out of the pocket. He's not good at being a shotgun spread offense quarterback for whatever reason. You would think that if he can make the throws that he does in a difficult situation, like running to your left and throwing to your right as a right-handed quarterback, he should be able to make those throws, which are arguably easier to make. I think this all boils down to his inability to sense pressure in the pocket, namely blindside pressure. And because of that, either consciously or subconsciously, he's thinking at any given time, I could get hit, and it just messes with his head. You see it in his feet. He's got happy feet. When you roll him out, especially to his left, he's able to see the pressure to his right, and that turns off that switch in his head, and then he's fine. My complaint...
Which is totally ironic, Joe, if I could just jump in real quickly.
Please do.
He came in with just the opposite reputation. If we go back to our Vikings, our Purple Journal podcast with Luke Braun many years ago, that's what he said the knock on him was coming in. And I recall that from other places, that he wasn't a good quarterback in space. He wasn't good on the run. And he has proven just the opposite. He'd come in as a pocket passer, and since he's been here, it has flipped. It's just amazing to me. And I totally agree with your assessment of how you just described him. I that's what you get. I mean, I find it very ironic, very strange, and I don't quite understand it. But go ahead.
No, it is very strange. I mean, I remember that. Everyone said he was statuesque. He was the anti-Case Keenum. Everyone was saying, with this offensive line, it's going to be rough because Keenum was doing some magic stuff back there, getting away from that pressure. But I genuinely think that's what it is. I think he's aware. I mean, he's cognizant enough of what he does. He prepares enough to know, I just can't feel that pressure. So you get him out of the pocket, and he just feels more comfortable. And when he's comfortable, he can make any throw on the field. My argument is that they seem to, in these big games, Seattle, you and I watched that game together, the Packers game, the majority of the Chiefs game, the first half of the Broncos game, they seem to get away from that. And Zimmer had some very juicy quotes that I put in the article, which were essentially after the game. He said, I have to wait till I see it on tape, but they did a good job of containing us and not allowing us to get Cousins out of the pocket. And then a few days later, after he had the benefit of hindsight and tape, he said, yeah, we probably should have gotten him out of the pocket more. That frustrates me on multiple levels.
Earth is calling.
Clearly. But I would rather lose against a good team. Like, I would rather lose this Sunday doing what this offense does well, because we've seen when they do that Cousins can put up elite numbers. I mean, that's really not debatable. It's when they deviate from that they do these just awful performances. I mean, that Packers game was historically bad. Not historically, but it was like the third worst offensive output of any team this season. It's
And
awful.
one of his worst games ever, too, I think.
Yeah.
I thought it somewhere it was one of Cousins' worst quarterback ratings or worst games ever. But yeah, you're right.
So I don't get why they do that.
Yeah, I liked your story. I thought you made a good case for the case you're making, which you haven't quite completed yet, but you will. But I liked your line where you said, I'd rather. I mean, you could maybe say it again. I'd rather have them lose doing what they do best than than.
Yeah, I'd rather lose at what the Vikings do best than lose trying to do something different. And
yes,
that's for multiple reasons. You don't learn anything
line, and
from that either.
It sums it up so well. I mean, that's what you should. You should be operating from a point of strength. You should do what you do best. Lay it out there in the line. If it's not enough, then you go
see
and
if they're good enough to stop you at doing what you do best.
Exactly,
because that's what football ends up being at some point.
If it's not good enough, you're beat by a better team. So yes. That you can. That's so much easier to live with than all of a sudden trying to, like you said in the article, out cute them. You said that many times.
Don't get too cute.
There is. And I think that's where people's criticism of Zimmer comes in, with it being out coached, because they're overthinking it too much. But to be honest, Zimmer has wanted to get back to basics. I mean, that's why he let John DeFilippo go, because he wanted to run and be a running team. And you have to attribute some of that game the other night to the lack of Dalvin Cook in there too, because with him on the field, even if he's hurt, the defense has to prepare more for him. They knew that they could sell out on the run, stop the running game, and then make Cousins go after you and send Zadarius Smith after you and make him nervous back there, and he's done. I mean, they've seen it on tape too, just as much as you and I have.
Yeah.
So I mean, with Cook out there, the defense can't load the box. They can't just sell out for one thing. If they're gonna you're going to get some with Cook, and he's always a threat to do this or that, to catch the ball and turn small plays into big plays. So do what you do best. That's what Zimmer has wanted to do now. I think you make a good point of this in the article. I agree with it. It seems like he really lets the offense be the offense.
That's the other part of it.
I didn't agree with your point about him not, he takes his microphone away. He does that, and he doesn't want to cloud up the airways and lets them do it. I think he'll put it down and make a comment what he wants to, but I don't think he spends that much time in the offensive game planning room. He just goes and focuses on the D and lets them do it. So
yeah, I mean the quote was a microcosm, I guess, of a lot of things, but it was a little frustrating to hear, like, well, I have to look at the tape to see why we didn't do that, as opposed to saying, I know why we didn't do it, because I was involved in it every step of the way. But
he's not going to give you that in a presser. He said that all. And every coach, look at Belichick.
Question.
Yeah, did Belichick come and explain why they lost, got beat by the Jets?
Then he did it like 4 days later, though, which was strange.
Yes.
He didn't do it immediately. He did it 4 days later.
He's honest, if nothing else. He's got to give him that.
It was whomever wrote the Star Tribune article about that quote is kind of where the article wasn't initially about that as much. And then the Star Tribune article basically said Zimmer said this, then he changed his tune completely and said this. Mm-hmm. And you hit your head against the wall basically wondering why they were doing some of the things they were doing. Dubious play calling, I think, was the way that they put it, but they weren't connecting everything the way that I did.
And Joe, last year we were saying the same thing with DeFilippo, because he came out and was mad because they weren't running enough. And I remember saying to you on the show, you and I going back and forth, why, since he's the head coach, can you not walk down to DeFilippo's office and say, run the damn ball more?
Exactly.
Why can't you do that?
It's like DeFilippo's not responded to my emails about running. Like, well, you are the head coach. You're not just the defensive head coach.
Yes.
I do put a lot of blame on Stefanski and company for some of these decisions. I can't imagine that they would be on Kubiak as much, because it seems like they deviate from the Kubiakian stuff, the heavy personnel stuff, the two tight ends, the I formation. It's when they go back to some of the stuff they did at the end of last year where they were doing all those amazing 3 and outs. that they struggle. And so my question, really leaving the article open, was not to specifically say they should move on from Zimmer, but say, do you want more of the same of this, or do you potentially want a change? Because the window of opportunity for this team, and this is a testament to Zimmer, has been open for a very long time. That's Zimmer's ability to identify talent, to implement that talent in his system. But I just feel like they're at a kind of a crossroads, and they have this amazing roster. And, for the fact that they're the 6th seed with this roster, that they're, I think, only ahead of the Texans and the Eagles in terms of their odds for the Super Bowl, which I know odds don't really matter, but that's the general consensus. They're going to be one and done. Assuming they are, do you feel like, okay, well, we can build on 2019 into 2020, or do you feel like maybe there needs to be some fresh eyes on this thing, at least from an offensive standpoint? I don't really blame a lot of the defensive stuff on Zimmer, because you can't really factor in the Rhodes decline and what that's meant for this defense. But if nothing else, I think they need some sort of new offensive-minded eyes on this thing. And the crux of it is, I think Kubiak should have more power, essentially, because I think that he's shown that he's been able to do remarkable things with mediocre rosters, but year to year, almost identical rosters. He's gone from bottom rung to top 10. He did it in Baltimore. He did it in Houston. And he won a Super Bowl when they had a team that was very much like the Vikings teams have been. Dominant defense on paper. And you bring in a quarterback as the final piece. Granted, that quarterback didn't win the first year, but he won when he was a shell of his former self in Peyton Manning. So I don't expect that to happen by any means, but I just don't want to go into next season with the same exact thing and expecting different results, because we all know what the quote is on that. Being the definition of an insanity. So I'm just a little down on the team, because I do feel like we saw even in the Seahawks game, this team can hang with anybody. They had the worst quarter of football of any Vikings team I've ever seen against Seattle, and they were still within 4 points at the end of it. And so it's very frustrating.
My turn? Okay.
Yeah.
You are a stream of consciousness, dude. There's no two ways about it.
Isn't it? It's I don't always know where I'm gonna end up, but I know I'm gonna not remember how I got.
Oh, way back in there, you asked me if I wanted the same thing, so I'll respond to that. I desperately do, for the sake of this show, to take a counterpoint. But I don't want more. I don't want more like this. I like the fact that they have 2 head coaches in there, and 2 of them on the same level. 2 of them, that have respect both from the players and the coaching staff. I don't mind that Zimmer is egoless enough to defer and say, okay, you take the offense. Ultimately, it all comes down to him, so he has to have, perhaps, I would agree with you, he has to have more knowledge of what the heck's going on there, so that when it doesn't go wrong in the game, he says, no, it's not working, I'm going to overrule you, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think he knows his deficiencies on offense, and he's willing to give that up. I desperately want 1 year of continuity, just one, for this quarterback or this offense or this team.
That's a good point.
I am so tired of every year starting over. Cousins has had 5 different OCs in the past 6 years, I think, or maybe it's even 5.
Yeah.
It was stretching back to
the Vikings have as well.
How are you supposed to do anything? Because you're always starting over with new personnel, a new system, new learning, and you're starting from behind the 8 ball instead of out ahead of it. Give them a year of continuity so that they know what to so Cousins knows what to expect. They know what to expect from Cousins. Zimmer knows what to expect from the offense, and they can make decisions better based on that. That's what it might not be the right thing. You made a good case for and maybe that is, to give what's his name?
Kubiak?
Yes, more.
That's what I was going to say. It's a very specific gripe. Like, I want
Yeah,
Kubiak, but nothing else, because you
and you
need two
may
or three
get it, Joe.
seasons to get there.
You may get it with Stefanski leaving. You may get it because he hasn't leaving yet, but
Head
he's going to get all
coaching
kinds.
opportunities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's already been contacted by the Browns, and he's on the list of everybody else's top candidates out there. And there's already how many openings? There's going to be 3 in the NFC East alone. So yes, that may happen because then Kubiak brings in his own guy, and maybe that he knows and can groom him, or he gives it to his kid. I hate to see that. I give
Maybe
Stefanski another year at this
Rick
job.
Dennison.
Yes.
I mean, I would be surprised. I know that there's going to be a lot of supply for head coaching opportunities, and I also know that the NFL is a very trendy league, and they're still enamored with these young, offensive-minded guys, and Stefanski's very loyal. He's been with one organization forever, especially by football standards. But you just get the feeling that this offense underachieved, statistically or otherwise. Yeah, going into, I mean, what are they, 16th in total offense, 23rd in passing offense. Good run offense, though. But he's had experience as a quarterbacks guy, too, so he might do well in Cleveland, for example, even though that seems kind of like a nightmare. So we'll see. I don't know if Kubiak's health would allow him to do anything other than what he's doing, so who knows, maybe Rick Dennison could be the guy, but he already basically brought in his entire team, his entire staff of guys.
Good point.
So it'd be a very easy transition. It's just I think they need a new set of eyes on it, and I mean, even if I was super
a new set of eyes on what?
On the offense.
But you're advocating for Kubiak, and he's there right now. So I guess I don't know.
A new set of eyes away from Stefanski, just more of what Kubiak knows.
Okay.
Total control as opposed to a saying. Just
you don't like Stefaniak? You don't like Kubski? You don't?
I like Joberly. I like I like Kubiak. I think that one of the benefits of losing Thielen was, if there is any, was seeing more of what Kubiak had to offer in terms of tight end play, in terms of, I mean, what we saw from Dalvin Cook. I'm not diminishing what Cook does because he's special, but then you see what Boone can do because of the zone blocking scheme, because of Dennison's system. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for what Kubiak has done as well. And so I just think that they're close. They just need to, when rubber meets the road and they're in these really tough games, they just need to stick to what they've been good at. And I think a lot of what they've been good at can be attested, or can be is what Kubiak has brought to this team as opposed to Stefanski.
The only
just
thing
in
I
personnel
can see,
and whatnot.
the only thing I can see as far as why they went away from their strengths on Monday night versus the Packers is it's just a known commodity. I mean, they play them twice every year, and they probably went in there and said, hey, they think we're going to do this, and we have to change it up because they know what's coming, and this is how they stopped us last time. So that is a little bit of getting too cute, but by the same token, I think that's the way every coaching staff looks at these games, because all the film is out there. Everything you do is in front of everybody. And if you don't in some way surprise them a little bit, they're going to be prepared and they're going to shut you down that way. So I don't know. Ultimately, I think it was bigger than anything else not having Dalvin Cook in there, because he has made as great a season as Cousins has had. I think it's a huge part of it is Dalvin Cook too, because it's the balance, and it's keeping the defense on their toes. They don't know what's coming. So
who would you give the going into the 2019-2020 regular season awards on offense? Who would you give the most valuable player to? I think I know.
Yeah, I do. The way I look at it is. And the way I answered it for someone who's writing a story on our site is, I thought Dalvin Cook was the team MVP and Cousins was the offensive player of the year. That's the way I look at it, because I thought if you take Dalvin out of that offense and it's a completely different offense, to a certain degree. I thought Madison could keeps it close, but he's still not Dalvin Cook, and he's still not even the mental threat yet of Dalvin Cook. And
yeah.
Cousins was phenomenal. Cousins was great. Cousins was everything we were asking him to be, except one thing, and that's to win big time ball games and not regress a little bit. I mean, I really feel there's two Cousins, a Jekyll and Hyde type guy, where he's everything the way you've described him. You know, he's got all the tools. He can make all the throws. He's very accurate downfield. He gets out of the pocket. He's a great quarterback. He gets a little nervous from being in the pocket and guys that are going to get in his face, and he becomes a different player, and that scares.
It's amazing.
That scares me with Cam Jordan coming in next week. Go ahead.
You know, it's astounding how wide the valley is between peak Cousins and bad Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at his QBR for the season being 13th, that doesn't really tell you the story, because at one point he was 3rd or 4th, and then at other points he was 28th.
Wow.
It's crazy, and it's because of that I made him the MVP of the offense, and there's one game that I think explains this very well, and it was the Week 2 game against the Packers. I will preface that by saying I think that Dalvin Cook is the heart of the offense, and we saw that almost in that game as well, but that game Dalvin Cook had almost 200 total yards of offense, and they lost because Cousins had his other bad second worst game of the year, both against the Packers, which is super ironic because he destroyed them last season. But it's kind of a cop-out for me to say that, because obviously teams go as far as quarterbacks take them oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of being the most valuable, and by valuable meaning determining the outcome of the game, I would give it to Cousins, because he can, when he's humming along, he looks great, but when he doesn't play well, they have no chance to win the game. So
yeah,
that's why I gave that to him. On defense, I'm interested in your pick for the most valuable defender of the year. I could almost say Rhodes by my definition of Cousins because of his impact, but there was a little positive impact there. I gave it to Kendricks. I think he is having a really great year. I think the Pro Bowl snub, obviously, a lot of people talked about that, but he's just been all over the field.
Yeah, look what happened to that defense the other night when he went out before halftime.
Yeah.
They couldn't stop Aaron Jones from that point on. I give him the same guy, and I saw on your sheet you had Kendrick Smith. I would put it as Kendricks Hunter. I thought Danielle Hunter has had a great season, and
I thought about that.
So I mean, and Harrison Smith's going to the Pro Bowl, so I mean that's legit too. But yeah, I think we're both with Kendricks on this one, because he's the heart and whatever of the defense. I mean, he's all over the field making plays. I didn't go back and look, but I think he's at the top of the tackles list every week. And your middle linebacker probably should be, but he's been there, and I think he makes Anthony Barr better. I think he makes the secondary better when he's in there. So whatever. I agree with you on that one.
I have for most improved player on the defense, I put Adenabo, who has quietly racked up 7 sacks, 4 in the last 5 games. He's a big play guy. It seems like every time you hear his name, he's doing something impactful.
Seems like every time you hear his name, somebody's mangling it, but go ahead.
Joe Denabo.
I shouldn't have said a word. I should have just.
I know you can't give me that kind of information, man. I can make sure.
I'm ditto on Odenabo.
Hey, look at us agreeing for something. I don't think anyone will be surprised by the. How did you put it? I said most regressed player, and you said
most disappointing.
Most disappointing, yeah. Xavier Rhodes on defense, obviously. Maybe Holton Hill gets an honorable mention because of his suspensions, and then you just didn't hear a lot from him. I think a lot of
still haven't as a result.
Yeah, it's kind of the elephant in the room for at least football nerds like us. Like, where is he? You know what I mean? You would have expected if we knew what we know now during his suspension, and we're thinking, okay, we're gonna rest starters against the Bears, you would have thought, well, that's gonna be Holton Hill Day, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe the team is over him, which scares me a little bit, but.
I don't think they are. I think they still need Zimmer likes those taller corners, and he's taller than both Hughes and I want to say Boyd or who else they have. He's a little bit taller than those guys, and we saw what happened with Mackenzie Alexander, and we saw what happened when they went up against was it out in Seattle where they couldn't. These guys are too short to just stick with the receiver.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so
it's definitely a problem.
But I agree with you. I don't know why we haven't seen more of him. I don't understand it.
Maybe they're saving him.
Could be.
For Sunday, they're going to need all the help they can get. MVP on the offense, we talked about that. Most improved player, or the other caveat was most, you could throw rookies into it as well, because obviously they can't really improve from year to year, but they can have an impact, and it was that reasoning that brought me to kind of another split. I want to say most impactful from a new player standpoint would be Ola Beastie Johnson, giving the Vikings an actual third receiver option, even though for the most part he played wide receiver 2 thanks to Thielen's injury. But actually, again, having a guy like that out there I think is really important. And then Dalvin Cook, obviously he's had just a tremendous year. Went from being a potential guy to being a guy that we all now talk about as potentially the best running back in the entire NFL. So it's hard to overlook him on that.
I went a little bit different in that one, a different route, because it is still offense, but and it may be just be a numbers thing, but it's also a security thing. I gave it to Dan Bailey, and I think it's really attributable to both a new long snapper and a new holder. Holder/punter. I think it really shored up that thing. He made 95% of his field goals, and he missed 4 extra points, but he's only missed 2 field goals this year, and I'm not going to say he's money yet, but he's so much better than he was last year.
He's got that streak of field goals under 30 yards or 40 yards. Exactly. I love that take. He doesn't get nearly enough credit for what he's been able to do, considering his season last year and just the inconsistency, speaking of lack of continuity at the position.
Yeah, he won the special teams player of the week twice this year, which is saying something. And I'm hoping that, I think I wrote about him in my post-game rant, but I want to say 31 years old. I hope he's not done yet, because Zimmer needs some continuity in this unit as well in order to,
nice?
So he doesn't drink so much red wine at the end of every game. So I'd really like to see this unit intact, and he can just relax, and I'm the guy, and they can go forward and live or die with him, whatever that may be, and we don't have to have this consternation of Daniel Carlson and blah blah blah. Wasn't it funny to see Kai Forbath kicking for the Cowboys and Dan Bailey kicking for us this year? It's bizarre how the kicking problem exists in this league, and how coaches handle it. It's really amazing.
Yeah. You're right. You can't say enough about having consistency at that position, considering that's outside of the offensive coordinator position. That's been the most up and down from year to year position under Zimmer. Most disappointing player on offense, I put Elflein. I was extremely excited about moving him to guard. He has played better
of late.
Yeah, it's hard to say that because of what happened on Monday night, but he wasn't playing as that was more of a unit thing than just him. He's had some glaringly bad games this year, and it was just surprising because maybe I latched onto that quote from his rookie season too much, where he said, "I'm more comfortable at guard than center." But he's been disappointing. Yep. I think Bradbury's been a bit disappointing as well. He hasn't graded out on PFF at good or at great or elite once this season. I think a lot of people, myself included, expected him to really splash onto the scene, but he's young, and there's a lot of it's a hard position to just jump into, I suppose.
I'm going to agree with you on that one, Joe, because for the same reasons. We all thought him moving to his more natural position, at least according to him, was going to be an improvement. And now, granted, you got to give Bradbury some experience in the league and let him move into his position. And hopefully we see some improvement there next year, or they got even more troubles. But, I would agree. I was looking at your list, and I was somehow trying to find a category to put Brian O'Neill in as far as, for a positive thing, because he's been such a solid player for the Vikings the past 2 years. He hasn't really been most improved because he was really good last year. And,
Yep.
There's talk now. I talked about moving him over to the left tackle spot, which I hope they don't do. I hope they get a decent left tackle and just let him be who he is. But it's hard to say this about Elflein because the unit as a whole has improved, although it had a pretty low bar set for itself. But I still agree with you. You got to give it to Elflein, and I just hope for maybe keep this unit intact. If they get somebody else to help improve it, maybe physically, but this is another unit on the team that really requires stability, continuity, and and getting to know each other in order to get better. So we'll see what happens there.
How are you feeling about Sunday?
Well, it's the day after my birthday, so I'll probably be hungover. No, I don't want to. I'm writing my preview right now, and I don't want to. I don't want to say too much yet, but did you? I don't know if you saw how the NFL Network put out this playoff preview thing. And
I was hoping you were going to bring that up. People are pissed. I heard that on KFan this morning.
This stuff is so silly, and it's perfect for the Vikings. Zimmer loves that. He knows how to use that cred. In fact, he already brought it up at the press conference. And,
did he?
Oh yeah, he did. He says, he goes, no. He didn't bring up that. I guess I think that was the emphasis behind it. But he said, it doesn't seem like anybody thinks we can win this thing. And the word was that he saw it, and he was kind of referring to that. So I'm sure he's going to use it and play it for him over and over. And Cousins mentioned it somewhere that someone was talking to Cousins, so they all know about it. But and that's fine. I don't care. Whatever it takes. I would like to see a really good game. I think it's going to be close, although 28 to 29 points a game by that offense scares me a little bit down there. And but the defense should be rested. They should be ready to go. They should be really ticked off about what they did the last time they were on the field. So they should it's a tough place to play. Man, Joe, I would love to say they're going to win. I'm not going to say which way I'm going to go. I guess I have to, don't I?
I suppose.
Well, I'm as you all know, I'm going to work. I'll work my story to the point where I'm going to say how and why they will win, and the way I get there is kind of fun. But I'm going to say that I'm going to pick the Vikings in a 24-23 win, and it's scary because I've only got a 5-point lead on you in our point series.
Wow.
So.
What if it came down to that? They very well might, because this team, having a lot of conversations with a lot of different Vikings fans, as I do when I'm at the liquor store, a lot of people, at least the ones that I think actually pay attention to football and not just...
And they're sober because they're coming to you to get alcohol.
Exactly, so that's always a good sign.
Yes.
But they're also at their most desperate. I would say that most people that I've talked to were most afraid of the Saints out of any team in the NFC.
I'm with you.
Put the 49ers behind that. I put in the agenda, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Had things gone differently, the Vikings would be going to Seattle, then potentially to Green Bay, which just seems a lot more palatable. But
I was hoping for the Packers matchup myself.
Me too. I mean, it would be nice. But I like I said, I think this team can hang with anybody. I just think they get in their own way sometimes. Getting kind of in a tizzy about the offense and the decisions they've made. There does feel like the secondary has played better. Rodgers was off for most of that game, like you said. There was 3 turnovers early in that game. Granted, they weren't all generated from the secondary, but the defense has played better. They were on the field for the majority of that game against the Packers.
They gave him a chance to win.
They really did.
Yep,
I
they
mean,
did.
3 turnovers, almost 4 in the first half. And the one that I
Right.
kind of thought was a fumble when he was running out of bounds, but whatever. I just think it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. If the Vikings play their game plan, which I think they will, because I strangely enough, as much as the quote that I used in that article kind of upset me, I think it also shows that Zimmer is cognizant of, yeah, maybe we do need to get him out of the pocket. I mean, he specifically said that. So
That's where the hits are coming from. Zimmer keeps rereading the
he's
article.
refreshing it in his car. So yeah, I do think it's going to come down to who has the ball last, and unfortunately, I think that's going to end up being the Saints, and I think they're going to beat the Vikings 42-38.
38. My
That's a big
goodness.
one.
Wow.
They just, I do think there's a benefit of the consistency there, though. The Saints, Zimmer has seen what the Saints do. They do have new wrinkles, obviously, but they played Breeze and Peyton multiple times now. So I guess we'll see. That would be so amazing. Beating the Saints would be, to me, that's hard to say, but it might be better than beating the Packers in the playoffs, because we've done that before. We've done both, obviously, but I said this on my show, Purple Update Live, the other day. You grow up as a Vikings fan, one of the first things you learn is that you don't like the Packers. It's part of being a Vikings fan. The Saints earned that hatred, and it's more genuine and visceral. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
you can see like a Packers fan at the bar and kind of be like, or like when they come into the liquor store, for example, I'll be like, oh, sorry, I can't serve you, and they'll be like, why? I'm like, look at your hat, and then we all laugh as I sharpen a knife in my pocket. The Saints fans I actually dislike, for reasons we all know. So who knows? Maybe the 10-year anniversary of what they did to Favre will come back and will upset them, and I'll be very, very happy. And we can go from there and look forward to San Francisco, but it'll be an interesting ride one way or the other. I guess we'll see. The season felt like it really flew by, though, didn't it?
It does. Every year, I'm amazed by that. I turn around and look at, because you wait for it all year. You wait, you go through training camp. When are the games to start? What are the games to start? They start, and it's such a week-to-week thing. I think
Yeah.
you don't even pay attention to the time is just flying by. It's during the holidays, and oh my God, you turn around and look, and heck, it's already over. I
Yeah,
agree.
it's
I mean, whereas the baseball season goes on forever.
forever. Yeah, it's a positive and a negative. It's
Right,
makes
right.
things so much more meaningful, but you don't really have a chance to sit down and take a breath, especially when you're covering the team 24 hours a day. But we will be back. Tune in to my new show that I'm doing daily. I wanted to do it every single day, but sometimes I don't want to get hyper repetitive, especially about things that might be perceived as just negative for the sake of negativity. So I'm not just going to sit there and hammer through the same points over and over again. But there's a ton of news to talk about, so I'll be doing a show later today. If you're listening to the show after it was live, check out our YouTube channel, Vikings Territory. Check out our Twitter, Purple PTSD or Viking Territory. Or check out our Facebook, which is the same two sites.
And certainly check out my preview and see
Yeah.
the magic that I weave in order to get to this
Ooh.
24-23 Vikings win.
That'll be on both sites as well. Hopefully, it'll be on Bleacher Report, Yardbarker. It's definitely going to be on Yardbarker, and whatever that new. I still am not sure what new partner. I've been applying for all these new partnerships, and I think we might have landed a big one that I just haven't seen the email for yet. Hence all the clicks that we were getting. Anyway, tune in on game day as well, because we'll be doing a pregame, a halftime, a postgame, and a live chat starting around 11:30 Central Time. But this has been Morning Joe's for the last day of the year of 2019. Happy New Year to all of our listeners. Thanks for all the support and everything. This year we've had some great growth, so it means a lot to us. But we will be back next week. Win, lose, or lose. Skull.